good on that, Greg.
Lorena, no mai hore mai. Welcome to the ordinary meeting of council this morning. Item 2, apologies. We have apologies from councillors Neville Cook, John Pemberton and Robert Kyton. Moved by Jeremy, seconded by Paul. In favour say aye.
Aye.
Item 3 is declarations of interest. I have not been made aware of any this morning. Item 4, public forums, petitions and delegations. Also not aware of any this morning. We'll move to item 5, which is confirmation of minutes. First cab off the rank is the ordinary meeting of council of the 25th of September. If there's no alterations or amendments, would somebody like to move? Moved by Eric, seconded by Paul. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
And 5.2 was the ordinary meeting of council of the 23rd of October. Again, are there any alterations or additions? If not, would somebody like to move they be accepted as a true and correct record? Moved by Lyndall, seconded by Phil. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to item 6, which is the adoption of committee resolutions. The first one up is the Cargo Southern Regional Transport Committee meetings of the 23rd of September. Jeremy, would you like to comment on?
No, I'll just take it as read, but just in regards to that, I'm happy to move it unless there's any questions. But as mainly always, there's obviously a lot of discussion around funding and obviously the allocation, the National Transport Program being released. So there was a bit of discussion on just where the shortfalls were and what the government was doing. So, but otherwise, I'm just happy to move it.
Yeah, I've got a question, Chairman.
Yep.
Just about the Dunedin City Council's Inland Ports project. Just wondering if, in your view, that has any impact on perhaps our own local inland ports and our port operation.
I think they're the main concern is obviously getting traffic out of the getting through Chalmers. So I don't think it's, and they're probably looking at the forestry. There's a lot involved. There's a lot of forestry in the years to come. So it's not. Yeah, I know. I certainly always promote Southland's ability to take stuff that direction, but no, I don't think so. It's just more of a congestion.
Yeah.
I'm trying to sort that out.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
You make
Yeah, I just want to ask a question on that to Jeremy. Is it something that's like been proposed here a number of years ago? It's like inland port is a staging area for the port. For are they struggling with space there?
I think it's more of like I say, congestion. They're just trying to work out the transport getting out to the chart. You know, a lot of the logging, a lot of forestry in the future. Understanding that, obviously Fonterra, a lot of Fonterra's products go from Southland too. So they're obviously, if they're trying to get the rail or however systems to get better flow in through the cities, it makes sense to expand out in Mosgiel. So yeah, I can certainly bring a bit more, read the whole papers if people are filled. Have you got anything?
It was just a key thing was preventing or reducing the need for trucks to transit through Dunedin City by moving stuff to rail before it gets to the city. It was a big part of it. Well, the reason why it's going to Port Chalmers, that doesn't change.
No.
Yeah, in terms of shipping capacity and how deep the water is and the capacity for the port to take large certain size ships, it doesn't change the equation.
Yeah, understand.
There's no further questions. Are you happy to second that, Phil? I'll put the resolution. All in favour say aye. Aye. Right, next up is the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting of the 9th of October.
I'll have a move that, Jim.
Moved by Lyndall, seconded by Jeremy. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Next cab off the rank is 6.3 Strategy and Policy Committee meeting of the 16th. Would you like to comment on the meeting?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And just very briefly, really pleased to have the regional climate change strategy adopted, and just a spelling error on motion recommendation number 3 needs to be changed to note rather than vote. And also 9.3, the government legislation and policy monitor. I commented at the time how that list of things in motion was like 17 pages long. 40 something items at play that staff and we are dealing with out of government legislation and policy. So there's a lot going on for everybody. And it was a fantastically presented report too. Thank you. So with that, happy to move. Thank you.
Seconded by Peter. And just that's a very good point. It's actually staggering the work program this government's got in front of them, and I guess we get frustrated at times that things aren't happening faster. But when you just look at the number of things, and we all have to actually look at them and consult on them, so our staff are kept pretty busy. So moved and seconded, no further questions. I will put that resolution. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Right, move to 6.4 Regional Services Committee meeting of the 16th. Peter, would you like to comment on the meeting?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just want to say that the workload of the committee, it seems as though it's growing as we focus back towards the catchment and flood mitigation climate resilience. So that's just a general comment. We have all the AGMs coming up in a couple of weeks' time, so that's something to note. But the meeting was notable for the retirement of a long-term employee, Doug McIntosh. It's closely linked in his items being a regular feature in the committee for many years, in the moving on of Fiona Young. So that was the headline of that meeting.
I'll second.
Thanks, I moved. Second, thank you.
Moved and seconded.
You're just too quick for me every time you're.
I'll put the resolution. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Right, move to item 7, notification of extraordinary items of urgent business. I'm not aware of any this morning.
Still a regulatory.
Say again?
I think there's still minutes of the regulatory committee. Check.
Oh, you're right. You haven't done regulatory. Very good point.
In the absence.
And Neville's not here today, so any points of clarification?
Yes, sorry.
Neville, you better move and second.
I have the minutes.
Moved by Jeremy, seconded by Alistair. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Midlife crisis on the phone.
I'm going to even pass the lyrics, so we can move now to the.
Don't kid yourself.
No, item 8 is questions. I haven't been made aware of any this morning. So we'll move to item 9, which is chairman's and council reports. There's been a bit going on since the last meeting, as a number of us attended the zone 5 and 6 meeting in Dunedin in the last couple of weeks, and when I read the agenda, I felt it was a wee bit underwhelming, but actually it was actually a better meeting than I expected it to be, and very interesting from a territorial perspective, in particular the Alan Craigmore update on the work they are doing. Well, their fresh water, they've been tasked by the government to actually come back with recommendations on wastewater in particular. And that report is not likely to be released until about March, and it may be later in the year before it's fully operational. And that's, I sort of feel for our territorial friends that when they have to make some decisions early in the new year, that that is quite difficult when you don't quite know what the regulation is going to be. But no doubt that will become clearer as time goes on. Lyndall.
Thanks, Jim. Just to follow that, Councillor Rodway and Councillor Morrison and I are preparing an interpretive dance as a report for the SNP meeting from the LGNZ zone meeting. So Councillor Morrison's leading the dancing. So there's some more to come on that, but there was, like you say, it was more interesting than the agenda might have appeared actually. Lots of nifty little takeaway things there. So that's coming, something for you to look forward to, everybody. And on Friday, was it Friday? One day last week,
Yeah.
I stood on, I was the local water done well, a workshop in Balclutha, Thriving Metropolis that it is. And firstly, the meeting was held in their new community facility, and it's amazing. It's a beautiful theatre with great views over the river and lots of community rooms that are available in an information centre and stuff. So that was lovely, really good. Interesting dissection of the Morrison Lowe report, and the guys from Morrison Lowe presented their data, and I believe that's not publicly available yet. Is that right? No? Morrison Lowe report. I thought it was,
It should be after that meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know, some very telling graphs around, you know, who will win and lose, if that's the right terms, in terms of shared water services, and then an entirely different conversation about wastewater. But I'm just preparing some notes on that as well, and I've also asked staff for a report to S&P around the impact of the local water done well, the impacts of that on our TAs and therefore us. So they're going to hopefully bring something to us at some point so we can see, because we can't ignore it. It's really relevant to us. And, you know, they've got some big decisions to make.
So can I just respond briefly? My understanding as of yesterday is that the Morrison Lowe report has not been made public yet.
Okay. So in that case, here we better be careful. We only talk at a high level, but you know, I think the zone can be commended for actually having that report done, and obviously the councils now have time to absorb it and look at the options. But it also came up at the Turupataio meeting where there was a high level presentation made, and so we had iwi actually saying, you know, it's great you've doing this work, and okay, there'll be differing opinions, but at least it will give a solid baseline for councils to make decisions going forward. And I have some concerns about what's going to come out of the Alan Craggle report, because they'll come out with what we as regional councils have to enforce. So we probably tend to be the meat and the sandwich to a certain extent there. We had quite a good turnout for Turupataio. I had a meeting in the morning, and so I've heard stuff at 2 or 3 different meetings, so it was great that Lyndall was able to attend. And there was some talk as to whether that meeting should go ahead, but the logic was that the ordinary members of council should be able to hear what that was in that report, and before too long, hopefully it will be available online, so that people can actually see that. It's sort of transparency, and it will take some time before we see much out of that. But other reports.
Just to follow up on that, Turupataio, Mr. Chairman, and what you were saying before, the Mayor of Invercargill was saying that they're pretty keen to go alone, but whether that view stays in the future, I don't know. I did talk to Nobby afterwards at lunch, and expressed concerns about going in with, say, Queenstown or Dunedin that have very high debt at the moment, and didn't think that he wanted to lumber the Invercargill ratepayers with that. But whether that view stays the same or the whole council decides something different, but I'm sure that was his view.
That's an important point, councillor.
The other thing that I was impressed by were the pleas. Pleas, I think pleas is the right word, PLEAS, from Michael and from Stuart and from Gail as well, about the need to keep the treaty agreement, uppermost, and all of this stuff about disposing of waste and in particular, they're concerned about what might happen at Bath and potential discharges going on to the ocean. Something that hasn't been decided yet, but I thought that was very important. I know Stuart was very impassioned at a meeting that we had, as everybody knows here too, that we can't forget that stuff, that should be uppermost, and it just seems to be getting swept aside a bit and left in the background. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind whenever we make decisions about these things. Thank you.
Thanks, Morris. Any further reports? Actually, just in addition to my report, the mayors and chairs had an update online in Dunedin from the people who are working on the Dunedin Hospital, and I actually came away from that meeting having a reasonable degree of confidence. It certainly wasn't just bean counters. We had the new medical officer, that won't be his total title for the whole area, that could look at things, but the guy looking at the build, I believe they'll get it pretty close to the money that's available. One of the things that came out was quite staggering. For every bed, there's 220 metres of space, and they were looking very carefully at how they could actually reduce that. And he was of the view they could take one level off it and still have the building for the future. And I mean, that's the debate for a long time. This is our tertiary hospital with a little bit of disparity around the region saying we need stuff done, but actually the point the medical officer was making too was having the expertise and the use of helicopters. The people that are doing the operations all the time it's actually a safer option than having perhaps more primary hospitals trying to do it all. But at the end of the day, I think we all want a system where equality sort of prevails and we have facilities available for the South Island. So I come out of that meeting thinking people that are looking at this, they're not just shuffling the money around, they're actually taking a really detailed look at how they can get value for money. But Peter.
Yeah, just got a report. Last night I went to Thrive Southland's Catchment Forum evening at Kennington Hall, and it was a really good evening actually. Richard Kite gave a more detailed presentation there with slides than he gave here when he talked. Found it very interesting. Talked about the protectionism that's creeping in to Europe and Great Britain about protecting their trade borders, something we should be aware of. They're worried about us and we're worried about them. And also some of the subject matter very interesting around energy resilience and especially around the solar farms, panels, whatever you'd like to call it. So yeah, really pushing some of the thinking out beyond pastoral farming as what you could say income support for farmers. So really well worth.
Thanks, Peter. Alistair.
Yeah, Jeremy and I attended the Beef and Lamb annual general meeting last Friday. Was it Friday or Thursday? Can't remember. And then went on up to Matt Taylor's property. At the meeting itself, there was a concern of where the sheep and beef farmers can go and what they can do, and whether we're just going through a lull and it's going to come right. They have no direction at the moment other than changing their operations. And trees were mentioned.
No, I think that is a conversation we need to have, is that when there's significant land use change, if we can make it easier for the better land to stay in farming of some description, because I've talked to some of the tree operators who said the expense of doing the right thing is a bit prohibitive at the moment, so I think it's something that we need to be trying to be more enabling so that we don't get our highly productive land with the trees. Any further?
Mr. Chairman, just a comment on that. Are the council aware of the regulations that are meant to be imminent coming from the government? We were told before Christmas around the constraints through land use of plantation forestry. Is there any information that we have? It seems that those regulations, I think, were meant to be delivered in the middle of through the winter, but haven't got here yet. But now I'm hearing before Christmas, so just wondering if we have any information on that at all.
Yeah. Staff will be able to tell us whether we can talk about what I've heard some of what's in it. The concerning thing is that it will, with property rights, it will not stop people planting that land. It would stop them from being able to claim carbon credits if they decide to I think more of these classes 1 to 4. But Rachel may want to. She'll know more than I do.
Marcus Roy is watch on this. He's got a report coming through that's strategy and policy committee in the market space. So we're going to use information and also update the newsletter as it's become public.
If there's no further questions, we will move to item 10, reports. And first up is 10.1, the Chief Executive's comprehensive report. Will, would you like to comment on your report?
Well, thank you so much, Chair. Just a few items from my perspective that are the focus. The first is that I'd like to reflect on the fact that we had a very successful Community Environment Awards event this year. The really outstanding finalists, and always as an event itself, a really good way for the community to come together, past year's winners as well, to focus on the positive in the region and the good work that's happening amongst schools, individuals, businesses, to really, advance the sustainability of the region. So just wanted to reflect on that and the fact that, this is now, we've built quite a strong alumni of people, and looking at sort of where we might take that very positive piece of work forward. And I think that this is proving to be year on year an outstanding event, and thank you to the judges who for whom this was a significant amount of their time. Yeah. But and we appreciate your judges' award as well at the end, so thank you so much. And then there's quite a bit of commentary in my report about the matters that are going through government at the moment. So there's coverage of the changes that we do know that came out of the RMA1 that's been in the media, but also our request to government that they've indicated that they will be looking at assisting us over section 70 of the RMA, and also matters relating to our current appeals processes around Rule 24, which relates to 78 and also to 78. So there's an update on that. In other matters, there's also a focus on the fact that we have had the wettest September that Council has recorded since we had long-term rainfall monitoring. So we're looking at something really quite significant that's happened in this region over an extended period of time, and it's had a significant impact on the region and is likely to continue to do that. We've also had an update from NIWA on what the weather forecast is looking like for the summer. So there is potential for quite hot weather and slightly above normal temperatures perhaps. So these have, we're very aware of what those impacts are on the community and on the region. So there's some commentary around that. Also just wanted to point to a couple of other matters further down. The work that's going on in the catchment integration group around catchment planning. There's also just a heads up too on the ongoing biosecurity matters that are in the region, but also just a reference to that we still have a consultation out on the response to Chilean flame creeper and Darwin's barberry, and that there is actually a place on our website to be able to go and comment and provide feedback on that. And also some commentary as well about the dairy top performers and how we deal with those in relation to our regulatory services. There's other matters, so feel free to ask questions of the staff. Thank you.
Just before I do that, I meant to congratulate our very own John Pemberton on becoming one of the 4 Nuffield Scholars going forward. So he kept that very quiet. I didn't know until this morning that that's why he was away today. So it's great to have one of our own people doing that, which I'm sure he'll come up. I'm not sure what his topic is, but I'm sure it probably will have some benefits for Southland and the environment. But I've got Peter.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just looking at your report, former at the bottom, the last 2 paragraphs on page 56. And just if you'd like to elaborate or comment, I'll just read a sentence. Environment Southland continues to work with the government on a Southland specific solution to ensure the rollout of farm plans supports Southland farmers. And went on to say, farm plans play a strong role in Southland's local approach to managing environmental risk. And we are continuing to encourage farmers to start pulling together relevant information. Have you got any further details around that you'd like to comment on?
Sure. So Councillor, the farm plans have always formed a very strong part of what this council's strategy is in terms of improving water quality. Farm plans are embedded in our planning process and also in central government. So the government has made some changes to its timeframes around the rolling out of that, but farm plans remain a core part of this council's program. So the detail of the development around how council will roll out its farm planning is we're expecting to be communicating those details to the community this month, and that I'm looking forward to getting out into the public. So the idea of this being a Southland solution and looking at this in a risk-based way is the approach that this council has decided at this table to take, and so that will be reflected in the way that we apply our water and land plan to the content of those farm plans.
Thank you. Phil.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I was just wondering about the opportunity inherent in the statistics around really wet spring. I suspect that it's as a bit of a standout event that there might be some really interesting insights emerge from the monitoring, environmental monitoring associated with that. And I suspect that may have also changed behaviours for some of our land managers and landowners. There's anecdotal evidence of perhaps aerial application of fertiliser in conditions that might have been suboptimal for uptake of those nutrients, and whether some of that had a flow-on effect into our waterways. I'm really curious if there's potential maybe in future meetings to have perhaps a report on how that may have played out for the region in terms of the impacts on waterways as a result of that really wet spring. Because my understanding is that the NIWA reports indicate that might be more likely to be business as usual in the future or very wet spring periods.
Thank you, Councillor, because we are doing exactly that. So there are a number of things that we are interested in understanding, not least of which is the long-term impact on people and the nature of society and the economy from these kinds of very extreme events, and what vulnerabilities exist in the system and what the impacts are across all 4 of our PO, environmental obviously, but also socially, culturally and economically. So there's work underway right now. The organisation's looking at all of those matters because they're of real concern to us for the reason that you say, which is if we're going to have ongoing peaks and troughs perhaps in terms of weather events, and that it becomes a little bit more frequent, then those vulnerabilities we need to actually have a response to collectively. So that's a really active matter. So yes, we look forward to bringing a report back to you.
Alistair.
Yeah, Phil, thanks for bringing that up. And if we had some real-time monitoring going on in these rivers, we would actually pick up that happening. Because there was considerable amounts of nitrogen went on and sulfur just to try and push things forward. But the system we've got at the moment won't pick that up the way it should. We might be able to pick that up in there too, real-time monitoring things in Menzies Ferry and the Taupo. The other thing that I was going to bring up, Wilma, if there's a spare seat in the Hollyford River, trip on the helicopters, Paul's ready to go and I'll be waving people's out. The other thing was, I had my yarn the other day to a staff member because I got all excited about the Waikawa integration thing the other day. We had it on the board, and I was going to go there tomorrow, but I found out that it's not happening tomorrow. But there's a hell of a lot of work gone in there. Now, if we're going to transpose that out across all of our southern FMUs, where's the start?
So the good news is that government has actually funded us more staff in this space. And so that is actually part of our planning as to how we do roll these catchment plans out. So yes, and we do have quite a reasonable number of staff. It's about focus on those particular pieces of work.
But just talking to one of your staff members regarding how much effort went in. And also, it's not just the effort, it's as I picked it up, it's the fitting everybody together.
Yes.
From the crib owners to the farmers to the forestry people, the whole thing.
Yeah, and that takes time, but it's also and a lot of focus and effort, which is why I'm very pleased that we have some good government funding to assist us with that.
Don't forget Hollyford.
Noted.
No. Jeremy.
Yeah, just following up on Phil's comments about the weather, and I certainly experienced once in a lifetime experience 3 times. Our property got 50 mils of rain in 15 minutes. It sat on our farm, and a kilometre or 2 kilometres away it was dry, and I've never seen water like it. And no, we've got rolling country, so she washed off quite vigorously. I don't know whether it's the right word, but it was a flash flood basically. And I did actually go back, have a look where we've got fenced off areas, wetlands or what we deem as a wetland, and the gouges, the water just ripped through there. It was quite phenomenal. But it was reflecting on what do we do when these things happen, and it was actually more make sure we're out of the way of it. It was first. So it was a phenomenal amount of rain, and but that's the most rain we've ever seen in my lifetime. So, when we look at climate change and things, there's a few extreme weather patterns happening. Yeah, it is challenging. There were some. This has been an exceptionally interesting spring, and it's surprising what methods of getting fert on and that in the past may have looked okay, but certainly a lot of neighbours were looking at certain other operations going, that's just not a good look. That just, it's not sort of acceptable, but they're allowed to carry on doing it. You mentioned helicopters, just trying to understand the implications of that. So especially when you get rainfalls like us, and it'd be interesting to see what's actually flowing down, how much has actually been utilised.
Lyndall.
Thanks, Jim. I've got 3 or 4 things if you can bear with me. Thanks. Firstly, in the strategy and policy science group, page 54, reference to the representation review closing this week. Just wondering if we know of any appeals in that process at this point.
Yes, we do.
Yes, no.
Through the chair, 2 appeals have been received on representation review. So the first of those is from Invercargill City Council, who are making the same, argument that they made in relation to the original proposals, we went through around urban representation and suggesting increasing the number of councillors to 13 rather than 12. The second appeal is from Lloyd McCallum, again, similar reasons to his original submission, and suggesting a mix between urban and rural, two constituencies, an urban and a rural constituencies. So the next step is for that all to go through to the local government commission and make the final determination by April.
Thank you, so it's up to them.
Yes.
Great, thanks Rachel. Secondly, the consent section from regulatory services on page 60. Just the information about the Contact Energy application reminded me that fast track process is now new for everybody. It's a whole new kind of a beast as far as how we handle and manage internally the requests for information and involvement in that process. So I'm just kind of asking really whether we maybe, with my strategy and policy hat on, need to think about specific policy and framework for how we process those at our end, the fast track requests, etc. Because it's a whole new, in my view, it's quite kind of quite different to the previous resource consent process. So I'm just wondering if we need to look to develop a policy specifically for how we deal with those.
Yes, so this particular one, of course, is under the previous fast track process, which we have got some form on. But yes, how the future process works with us is it's a good point. I mean, I don't think there's anything particularly unusual about the process. I mean, the issue for us is primarily going to be that we're going to end up having to administer consents that the process doesn't include us in the decision making. That's really the only matter.
Oh, yeah, I was just wondering about the specifically about the requests for information from us all the time and how that impacts on staff, and but we can
But we can bring back to a
we can discuss
committee
that
clarity about what
workshop.
that looks like in the new policy framework.
Yeah, thank you. And the last thing is the corporate services on page 63, just noting the rates paragraph, but also flagging that New Zealand Post have announced, yet again, reduction in services. So wondering, how we're thinking about managing that change, because there'll be, there are a lot of rural people who are significantly going to be impacted by a reduction in services. So just flagging that maybe we need to have that conversation at some point in the risk committee, maybe, or somewhere. Thanks.
I understand that reduction in services is Chair is actually up for consultation, so people may want to be
Or maybe
commenting on these matters.
Thank you, that's me done.
Peter, myself, Alistair and Morris, were you indicating?
Thank you.
Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just want to go back to Councillor Gibson's question regarding the integrated catchment management plan of the catchment. And this one, I understand it's in development for the Waihopai group. Has this council, excuse me, has council got a policy of support? Are we not letting this, but are we accepting that this is an organic movement of individual catchments determining their own future? What's our comfortability level on that as a regulator? How does regulation fit amongst these plans? I'm suggesting that maybe we need to have a little workshop on this, whether we encourage and actively create a platform for this to continue on with other catchment groups that wish to do this, and other catchments that wish to do this. So I think I've said it before, I'm in favour of people determining their own future, and I think this council should be in a position to support people realise that, but I'm only one of 12, of course, so but I think this should probably warrant a more detailed discussion by this council about what support we could give these groups that are looking at determining their own future. So it's just a general comment, Wilma, if you
Yeah,
like.
so thank you very much for that question actually. So these two plan processes were pilots, looking at what the catchment planning could look like. So they're very helpful to us. They were using funding that we got from MFB to look at what that pilot process might be like. They are going to now inform what we do in the space that we've discussed and council has agreed to, looking at those catchment-based action plans and how that works. So yes, that information will come back, and when we work through with council in the next few months what all of that catchment action planning looks like, this was part of the information. So it's not a project that's running in parallel, it's some pilots to inform that.
It's me next year, well, just commenting on that, I think, that we can work with these other groups. It means we've got a whole lot more staff out there and people doing things, but government's telling us work with the community, action on the ground. I think it's ideal, and we just need to have a degree of coordination. And of course, that's why in the LTP we agreed to put some funding into thriving to actually get wetlands going, get more of the stuff going on, and actually, it's a coalition of the willing, I guess, is to actually make sure we leverage as much action as we can. I had a question about the bottom of page 60. The people have been asking me when are they going to see the Waituna consent. It's application closed on the 3rd of September, and the processing is currently suspended at the applicant's request. And people are saying to me, well, would we be able to do that in their own situation? So it'd be good to get an update on when that will actually come on.
I can give you my understanding at this point. The consent is on hold till the 25th of November at the request of the applicants. That's to have the modelling peer reviewed to look at response to the submissions in terms of the proposed consent conditions that are in the application. I can't remember a couple of other things. There's been questions around the timings and things. The consent is being processed consistent with requirements of the RMA, the time frames, and all of the processes that are part of that from a regulatory perspective. We are clear on the process going forward. My expectation would be, given it's on hold till the 25th of November, the earliest you're going to realistically have a hearing would be in February. That would be the earliest, given over Christmas, New Year. And what we're already finding is, even if we went looking for commissioners for a hearing panel, mostly they're declined right now. So they're all either busy or looking at their holidays or whatever that might be doing. And we will be looking for really well qualified commissioners to be part of this process.
Well, thanks for that. I guess if the community knows a timeline, they probably.
And I'm about to reply to one of the queries from a regulatory point of view. I'm undertaking the regulatory side, and Lucy's on the applicant team in terms of ensuring we keep a clear divide between the two responsibilities.
So thanks for that. And yes, it's good to see on the top dairy performance, the numbers that are taking that up, and we'll have a fight. It'll cost them less, so they'll have less visits. But it's really good to see that the number of people is improving, and the number of actually down to 1% of serious non-compliance, down from about 3. So it's good to see that that's coming through. Alistair.
You through you, Mr Chair. Don't run away, Don. I'm just concerned about what's happening with our Matera Water Conservation Order and the review of all those consents. Well, it's 3 years now since we started.
And I am the person solely responsible, well, the chief executive ultimately is, but I'm the person solely responsible for that because I've been involved for that period. The process is complete. What we don't have still is confirmation from the final consent holder that they will achieve the saving that they need to make to meet compliance with the water conservation order. There is no indication in any of the meetings and any of the conversations that I've been in touch directly with them that that's a problem. What we need is the written confirmation that that is what they will sign up to, and that is what we haven't been able to figure out. In terms of every other consent holder, they're being held up by that process. They've all confirmed in writing, in whatever way, their commitment to the changes that are needed on their consent.
That in some ways gives us an opportunity if we move reasonably quickly, isn't it? That maybe the consent holders, the water users group, become the owner of the consents. Because they're all sitting there ready to go through, aren't they?
Yes, they are. It just needs written confirmation that we can meet the limits of the water conservation order, and that's what we're sitting on. The community, I think any suggestion of a collective approach has been interesting because that it'll happen at a meeting, but it's not what happens privately behind the scenes in terms of feedback that we get.
Yeah, I was just thinking the time's
So
coming.
nobody says no, and then they're in touch with Bianca or whoever else going.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a mismatch.
Mhm.
But there's two things. For those that are under straight consent review, the process, once we get to the limit, will be very simple. For anybody with a replacement consent, it goes through the normal processes and may well have affected parties identified, and that will be done in the normal process. So, for instance, with Hokanui, we have their agreement that for the consent review concerns, just tell us that it's done. You know, we don't consider ourselves an affected party. We don't either, but it's better to get confirmation. For replacement consents, that's a case by case basis, depending on the normal assessments. Which is,
I understand it's that number.
which
Yeah,
number?
but that's okay. 2 litres.
But what, is this
So that-
pertaining to this one?
Yes, yes,
So
that's
I'll
right.
take you ahead of Morris then, Jeremy.
Yeah, sorry. Just in regards to that, obviously, it's in public information, you know, I won't name people, but there's a bit of frustration out there.
Yes.
This applicant has a number of consents, so
Yes.
it's quite important. There must be a timeline. We need to be reasonably, we want this to work, and I take it, have we got a timeline that this needs to be? Because there will be plan B, which is unfortunately go to court.
We keep getting the timeline.
Yeah.
So I expected to be able to turn up today and say,
But I was just saying, do we make the timeline, because we won't?
yes,
We need to be quite,
yeah. The issue is we have to be compliant with the water conservation order. We have to have the numbers that add up. We're within the margin of error, quite honestly. But that's not how the law kind of works.
So
I'm trying not to sound too frustrated.
would you be happy? No, I'll just deal. You go. I know you-
we have.
No, I was just going to say, would you be happy for us to kick his tail?
Absolutely. I have no issue.
Offline.
I think
I-
this is not,
I-
this is not.
Yeah, I think we will stop that conversation there. We can have a conversation offline. Morris.
Right. Excuse me, following up from Lyndall's comment about a more formal input process through the fast track consent applications, I support that. At a consent process that this council manages, we have section 42A officers that we employ and we have experts that we employ so that, you know, the council's water plans and decks and policies are all complied with, and so I support Linda what she's saying there, and I hope that we can get the report. I think, Wilma, you indicated we could get something in that line for the next session, regulatory committee or the.
That's a good idea.
The Bluff fallout update, it's good to see that there's some more action there. At the Local Government Conference, I spoke to Craig Pauling, I think it was Craig, he's the new chairman of Environment Canterbury, and also a councillor Allen from Otago Regional Council and the deputy chair of the Nelson City Council, very bright and capable. And we all talked about the need to have a combined or more cooperation in the area of biodiversity in relation to the coast. So I think staff are possibly already working with other councils on this, but there seemed to be a willingness at the governance level at least to try and promote that, and I think it's very important. You know, we can have our own rules and clean gear certificates and things like that, but everybody needs to really have the same kind of system in place for it to be much more secure. So that's a comment, but certainly I think there's indication that there is support, at least South Island wide, for more cooperation in this area, which would be very helpful.
No, thanks, Morris. And yeah, those pathways conversations, and that does seem to be, at a governance level anyway, quite a bit of positive enthusiasm. Any further questions on this report? If not, would somebody like to move?
I'll move.
Moved by Eric, seconded by Paul. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Right, we move to 10.2, the process of appointment of an independent member to the investment committee, page 64. Eva, would you like to comment on the report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You may recall that in early September, Council agreed to establish an investment committee, and through that process also agreed to appoint at least one independent member who will become the chair of the committee. So today what I'm coming back to you is to seek agreement to the process that we will use to recruit that independent member. But before we need to get to that process, we need to consider and hopefully agree a new council policy on the appointment of independent members to council committees. So through you, Mr. Chair, I think it might be helpful if we focus on this one at a time, focus on the policy, because that will then potentially influence the process, and if we can focus on the process.
Thanks for that. Questions or comments on the report before us? No, I think it's a good report, and we've been talking for some time about setting up an investment committee which covers all our assets rather than just our Southport shares. And we've had good advice from around the countryside of the value of having an independent chair that has the right skill set. It means that, well, we've got capable people around the table. In an election cycle, things change, and it's quite good to have some consistency going through. Eric.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It's a good start point. Council will be aware that next Tuesday they Investment Committee will be meeting and we'll iron out a few things there, or which will come back for affirmation by the council. But I think if you look at the purpose, firstly, just want council members to note that the council may decide to appoint independent members to the council. And when we had the discussion first up, we were talking about one person, but given that this role, we're looking for a chairman, we're looking for someone with Southport knowledge, we're also looking if that person doesn't have fund management, and then there's also the aspect that we might want green investment given our sizable holding of land around. So I think that's just an open book. No decision has been made. It's not saying there'll be more than one, but I think we need to affirm as a council what our expectations are. And you may not find the one person that fits those 3 or 4 dimensions all in one package. So just note that.
We've got Lyndall, then Peter.
Thanks, Chairman. I just wanted to clarify that this is, this enables appointment of independent members to any council committee. So
Yes.
this is not specific to the investment committee.
We currently have an independent on the Risk and Assurance Committee.
Correct.
When I drafted this policy, I was very cognizant of the process that had been used by council and thought about this for potentially any committee that council considers appropriate.
So yes.
So it's a bit vanilla for
So
that
it
reason.
follows on from Councillor Roy's point about
Yeah,
possibly more than one.
stepping forward a wee bit.
Thanks, Chairman.
Peter.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I think it's a good idea. As Eric said, in specific topics, co-opting expertise when needed is a common practice in the commercial world. On board. So I think it's a good idea.
Do you want somebody to move that policy? So that would be 1 and 2, I suppose.
Yes, recommendation 2 is firstly adopt policy, if that's okay.
I'm happy to move that, Chairman.
I'll second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? That recommendation, all in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'd now like to move on to the position description, which is before you. So this is now honing in specifically to the role of the independent chair of the investment committee. It's shaped again very much at the same level of detail as the position description that we've used for the independent chair of the risk and assurance committee, noting the range of responsibilities that we are suggesting for this person. Another thing just to note is that we're proposing this one be for an initial 12-month period, just really to align with council training. I couldn't find any piece of legislation that did limit the term needing to align with the end of training for regional councils, but often councils do that as a practice. So one of the things I've noted in my paper is that you may wish to consider whether this appointment is for through until the end of the training, or whether you wish to be for a 3-year term or potentially go through to the end of the next training. It will take some time to build knowledge, but that is your choice.
Lyndall.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. That was something that I was slightly perplexed by when I read through the description, but just as you speak, I'm thinking actually that a 3-year term from appointment sits okay with me, but to see what my fellows think, my colleagues. Right.
Fellow councillors.
That's what I was trying to say, and I got all confused. Just I'm quite comfortable with appointing one for 3 years and getting on with it. But maybe with a 1-year review period, I don't know whether that's possible. But
We just look here when we go to the market as to what we are offering, and that may or may not influence the level of interest.
So interested in those thoughts on that one actually. Yes.
I've got Alistair, Eric, and Peter.
I'm just looking, through you, Chair. I'm just looking at page 65, the 2,500 to 3,000 meeting. Is that normal?
That is aligned with what I can see in the market for other roles, similar roles that are being advertised through the Institute of Directors. And a meeting fee, rather than an annual fee, I think is more appropriate, as the committee is trying to get established, and to take a really active role in managing the portfolio. More meetings may be required than once the committee has actually matured, and then less meetings may be required. However, we can test that with candidates.
So you say you're meeting in maybe more meetings required. I just read in my simple brain, when 10 meetings a year, the 25 to 30,000.
Yeah, I would doubt that the committee would get to 10, but I don't know that. That's up to, once we get the committee established, we need to work through the revenue pace.
That's
And next week's workshop is to help inform the committee to then work out this program for next year.
Yeah.
But yes, your answer is correct.
Eric,
Yeah, I'm just responding to Lyndall's point about the term of appointment. I'm a supporter of the 3-year. It kind of fits where things sit in other areas of appointment. And I think if you restrict it down, you're saying we don't trust our process to pick the right person, and it may have an impact on who would apply for the job. So I think it's sensible to stick with what is a standard out there and back ourselves to get the right person.
thanks, Eric. Peter,
Yeah, I support Lyndall and Eric's words on that 3-year. It makes sense. So we have a crossover with new councillors, but we've got an established chair sitting there anyway. So we've got that continuity that goes through that instead of all new faces sitting together, asking each other what do we do.
Jeremy,
Just on the salary, obviously they get a director's fee as well. but
Yes, if they're on the board, then they get a
that'll
fee
be
for that from the
separate
board, but
from
not
the
from us.
board.
And our key priority is to appoint a person that is right for us and that board.
Yeah. I think it'd be, actually, to be honest, I see some benefit in actually appointing 3 years now, sort of crossover election, that is consistency there too. And it's not necessarily a elected appointed, when we will change, but there's a wee bit of consistency over it. So, and also that if someone's committing to right, I'm willing to do this for 1 year, might indicate a wee bit of selection process. There may not be as many quite keen on that, so I'm quite happy with the 3-year term.
also happy with the 3-year term, and I guess we need to reflect on why we're doing this. We actually want to try and leverage our balance sheet for the benefit of the ratepayers going forward, and the ability to get the right skill matrix, because we'll put out for expressions of interest, and we may have somebody that's involved with Southport that put their hand up, but we don't know until we go through the process. But I think the important thing is that we do get the right skill set on this committee, and we'll see how that runs. And it'll evolve over time, as Eric said, and eventually we may end up with a couple of independents, but we start on a journey and we go from there. Alistair.
I just look at the draft, through you, Chair. Draft position description, second paragraph down. The independent will also be appointed to the Southport Board. I think a follow on from Councillor Roy, that I'm not sure that we did vote for that in that meeting. It seems to have got lost as time went on. We did in the second meeting back here, but in our original meeting, we were looking at to get a chairman for the investment committee alone, and then go for a Southport member, because we're gonna have difficulty in putting the two of those, that double expertise together.
So under, on
So
page,
what I'm suggesting is instead of will, may.
through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor, on page 64, under the heading of summary, I checked the decisions that were made in the 4th of September meeting, and unless I have the wrong summary to refer to, but the decision was that the member will also be appointed as a non-independent director, unless this council today wishes to make an alternate decision.
I think it gives us the flexibility, Alistair, of what comes out of this process, and I think that's what we're wanting. Any other, Linda?
Yeah, sorry, thanks, Chairman, just to have another crack. I guess if we reword, that first paragraph about the initial 12-month period, changing to 3 years. But also, I'm assuming that there's a out clause if we found by some strange twist of cruel fate that we ended up with somebody who wasn't suitable. What's the out process for that?
We would enter into a contract. Again, we have one that we've used for the independent chair of the Risk and Assurance Committee, which we would look at as a starting point. My reflection that does have a termination clause in it, and it would be quite typical to have a termination clause in contracts of this nature.
That's right. I would like to suggest that we change that to a 3 year.
Both positions?
Sorry.
Well, we're only appointing the
We're putting one to both
the
positions.
independent chair at this point. So that would be for 3 years, is my suggestion.
Hang on.
Sorry,
Okay, Paul, go.
with review through the employment contract would be for not only the independent chair position, but also the board member position. And that's basically both.
That is a previous decision we have made.
Yes, yeah.
It's one person.
I'm still confused.
I'm happy to move that recommendation with that change. If that's, do you need some word with that?
No, I can, as long as Jan can note that we agree the position description for the chair of the investment committee, but making the appointment for a 3 year term. If that's the motion.
So we're moving 3 as amended.
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Moved by Lyndall, seconded for that. Peter, any further discussion? I will put the recommendation. All in favour, say aye.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Roy has raised the question about whether we should be considering the appointment of 2 people. When we discussed that at the previous council meeting, we said only 1 for now.
Yeah.
However, there could be an option which you might like the panel to keep in mind, which is if there are 2 suitable people identified through the process, whether we come back to you to consider the appointment of 2 people, and that might help us better differentiate who of those 2, if we get to that point, is best skilled for the chair and who is best skilled for the report. That is not in my paper, but that is, I'm just picking up a point raised by Councillor Roy and others seem to have some interest in that.
And
So just for clarification on the process, you've got an investment committee meeting coming up. If the investment committee meeting resolves that there might be, it's a workshop, sorry. It's a workshop, yes, it's a workshop, that there might be some thought about more than 1. That should not make a difference to what you're agreeing today, because this is about policy and process and not about any other decisions. So the decisions that Councillor Gisson was referring to are decisions that this council made at a council meeting in relation to the nature of the independent person being the chair, and that an independent person be appointed to the Southport board. Both of those were decisions, and we discussed that with the Southport board. If you decide that you want more than 1 independent member, then that's a decision for council as to which one becomes a member on the Southport board. That's to be discussed in the future.
So therefore, the independent member may also be appointed to the Southport board in the job description.
The decision made by council to this point is that it is unlawful. It will, unless, however, council decides to, through a formal paper process, change that decision. That's my understanding.
Yes. So currently, council's decision is 1 member. That member will be the chair, and that member will also be appointed as a non-independent director of the Southport board. Those were decisions of council.
I've got Jeremy, Eric and myself.
I think that, like, obviously in the workshop, we'll be able to discuss whether about another independent member, and that's what they're, and I understand, like, if there is a good person putting it up, and maybe not directorship, it would be good to have that flexibility. But also, when you even look at our investments, our investment managers, I look and go, well, maybe they could be involved in the investment committee as part of their job. The ones that I'm talking about, Joe B. Weir or whoever it is at that time, could be probably good to have them sitting around the table, maybe that, so that's stuff we can sort of develop into who we need in that area. But I just to Alistair, I was always full of the fact that person was going to be a director board in due course. Well, it's first position anyway, because that's what we want as a oversight for us as council. I think it's about having a non-independent there. So
Just through you, Mr. Chair, JD Ware will be in attendance for part of the workshop next
Okay.
week. They will have two people talking to us.
Eric,
Just in case people picked up that I'm kind of almost demanding there be two, that's not the case. I'm saying we need to think about that. I am a person that does subscribe to the view that you don't need to appoint a director for every bit of information you need to gather onto a board. That one of the options which should be considered in this is actually buying advice, buying a report, or investing in a stream of information without actually appointing someone to a board. And that's the kind of discussion we'll have to work our way through going forward when we see the quality of the person and the skill set they've got and what we actually need to do. But I am just alerting the council to the fact that more than one person may be a possibility, but it is one of the options.
thanks, Eric. And I was just going to say much the same. Let's keep flexibility in the system, but at the moment we're dealing with what's in front of us. So are we in a position where we can?
I think I moved it, Chairman.
So that's recommended 3. Agree with position description for the chair of the investment committee, but amending the term to a 3-year term.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I'll put the recommendation. All in favour, say aye.
So the next point is just honing in a little bit on the process. So we will now follow the policy because that has been ratified, suggesting that we will advertise in 3 sites for a 2-week period. It could be potentially slightly longer than that, but not shorter than that. Suggesting the panel will comprise at least 2, but no more than 3 councillors who are already on the investment committee, and they will be supported by a senior member of the council. And I've included an indication on the remuneration. So just seeking your agreement to that process, please. It's trying to get on.
Move it.
It's 4.
I can second that. I agree with that.
Peter, your comment or
No, I was
just
just going to second that.
seconded? All in favour will say aye. Aye. So carried.
And then finally, I'm asking you to nominate up to 3 councillors who are already on the investment committee to be on the selection panel, and then the panel will ultimately make a recommendation. The recommendation will come back to council.
Peter?
I'd just like to move for a consideration, Jeremy, 3 members, Paul and Al, to sit on that panel. If anyone else wants to sit in that?
Nominations, I was thinking like somebody like Eric, who's the chair of the, could be on that, but
I'm thinking of continuation, you know, of giving newer councillors more responsibility as time goes on. Remembering too that does the foot do go to full council, of course, being a senior staff member is alongside in that process too.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure we're at the stage of appointing actual committee to do that, and then that will be a separate process afterwards.
Sorry, I thought I needed to ask in council the nominations for councillors to form the basically the selection panel. So staff will kick off an advertising process for the selection panel to be involved in, you know, identifying a shortlist, participating in interviews, and then coming back with a recommendation. So
are you expecting
if I've got my process wrong, then I'm sorry.
That's my misunderstanding probably. So you're expecting us to agree to to recommendation 5, and at the same time name 3 people who should be on that panel.
Ideally, if you would prefer to have further discussion.
alternatively, we could have that discussion at the committee meeting, because the panel's not going to be meeting for a wee while yet, but we'd have to go back to council to be ratified. But that might give us a chance to have a wider conversation, I'll throw that out there.
Councillors are on that committee.
Well, question then, Chair, what's your anticipation timeframe wise of advertising
Yes.
and making a recommendation to council? Because we need to make sure that fits chronologically.
Yes. I had originally hoped to have this paper through the meeting, that was the extraordinary meeting. But obviously didn't realise it wasn't possible. If we were in a position to start advertising later this week, taking account of at least 2 weeks in the market, going through selection, etc., we would likely have a preferred candidate identified before Christmas, but not before the December council meeting, and we would need to come back to council in the new year to ratify that appointment. If we wait until after the workshop, which I think is actually quite beneficial because that will give us more insight into the nature and workings of the issues that the investment committee would need to address, we could start the process and hopefully get to that same point pre-Christmas. Alternatively, you may wish to begin the process in the new year and have that full clear run. So that's some choices that I was intending to discuss with the panel.
Wilma?
So, Mr. Chair, can I just make a suggestion about process at this point? And I'm just going to check with Jan a matter. This is not we're not appointing councillors to a statutory entity. So we're just selecting people to participate. So if you want some time, councillors, to consider that and discuss it amongst yourselves, that could be a matter that happens on Wednesday. So that would be fine. So what you could agree today is that you will nominate up to 3 councillors, but it does not have to happen at a council meeting. It's not a statutory panel. Thank you. Yeah.
Wednesday is a workshop.
Yes. Tuesdays.
Tuesday's the workshop.
Yes, and the agenda is sorted.
Sort that out.
So just
Peter, you got a comment?
Yeah, I've moved 3 councillors and I think we should go through this and pass it recommendation 5. I don't think it's such a big deal that we should be putting it off and I'll look for other nominations too. This is the place to do it out in the open. So I'll put something on the table. Anyone want to second that? They can. If not, other people to come forward.
Morris?
Well, if that is a motion, it needs a seconder and then to vote on it. But, so, shall we do that and then we can discuss the motion?
So there's been a mover, I haven't seen a seconder at this stage, but
so have we made it past the other ones that we were talking about? Yes. Yeah, okay. So we done 4.
We have read, sorry.
We have done 4, sorry.
Yes, we've read.
Right. Okay. So the question then is whether or not you want to do this at this time or not.
Yeah, it's the perfect place to do it.
Councillors, it's over to you to decide.
Individually.
Mr. Chairman, we need a seconder for Peter's motion.
Right,
We
yeah.
don't have one yet.
so if there's no seconder, it lapses and then we can have another motion.
Chair, I could be happy to offer myself if that's a service, and I do have fiduciary responsibilities in other fund management areas, so I'll just put that on the table. If you want to get someone else, that's fine, but I am the interim chair of that committee as well.
So if this is problematic because councillors would like to talk about this, my point is that you don't have to do it at this meeting because this is not a statutory committee appointment. It's just a panel from your committee. The committee itself can decide this if you want to do it that way because you have not had time. I'm just thinking about it's heading towards 12 o'clock. It's, it would be good to settle this, but if it's not to be settled at this meeting, it doesn't have to be settled at this meeting, is my point. That's all.
Well, we've also got 3, sorry.
Well, at this stage, we haven't had a seconder, so if there's no seconder, my recommendation is that it is discussed on Tuesday, which gives people to have time to make sure we've got the right balance. The points Peter's making about having some new blood is valid, but also my concern is, we want some balance there, and I think that's a better place to do it. We've got nominees onto that committee. Let's do it there. The decision will be made there, and we can move on. So there'll be no hold up. So, Peter.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to say that my nomination of the three does provide experience with Jeremy, or alternately with Eric too. That's absolutely crucial. That does bring in some new councillors. So, and that's always been my concern with appointments, is that the concentration of these jobs sit at the top end all the time. So
The fact that there hasn't been a second, I detect that
yeah,
the broader council would like to have a broader conversation. That's nothing against the nominations. Linda?
Chairman, also, maybe there's a conversation around the fact that there could be 4 councillors rather than 3, but I don't want to go, you know. And also we've got a number of councillors away today, which I, you know, so I'm agnostic about whether we do it today or next time, but those are things that are in my mind, and I am, you know, interested in being on that appointments committee. Have been, you know, involved in the appointments of the directors as we've gone through right for 8 years. So there's a bit of experience in my head as well, and slightly offended that I'm considered old and useless.
Oh, no, that's
Thank you.
not the appropriate interpretation of it.
Paul?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, I'd like to nominate Jeremy as one of the councillors.
So the feeling I'm getting at the moment is, well, I'm actually going to move to the chair that we let 5 sit on the table to be decided on Tuesday, which means that that conversation can be had, including four people wouldn't be a disaster either. So, but I think it would be tidy. Or do I have a second for that resolution?
Well, I think, Chair, we need to determine the number of councillors, and the question has been raised whether it be 3 or 4, and then that discussion can go to the workshop on Tuesday. And I think if we were to pass 5 with the number specified without identifying the people, that's an appropriate step at this stage.
Yeah, the policy that you just agreed says that each panel will comprise at least 3 people, so it does give you some flexibility. And they will include at least 2 councillors and may include a member of staff and or an independent member with relevant knowledge and expertise. So that's what the policy is just
Okay,
said
cool.
around
That's
that.
clear.
We also need to be mindful from the candidate's perspective, how many people they're speaking to on the
Yeah, don't want to get
So,
So you're seconding my recommendation?
Yes, I am.
on that?
Thank you.
Okay, any
So,
further
Chairman,
discussion?
not completely clear at the moment, is this going to be up to 3 or at least 3?
at least 3.
Well, we've
At
agreed
least-
to at least 3.
At least 3 is what you've agreed to on the policy.
Right, so the wording has to be changed there.
So the chairman is moving that the nomination of, can we remove the word 3? Nomination of councillors to be on the selection panel, et cetera, will be made following a workshop on Tuesday next week. Would that be the motion? Yes.
Are we happy with the motion? We're clear with that? I will put that motion on the table, say aye. Aye, against? Carried. Jeremy?
Sorry, I appreciate the support. But you didn't table, I think you were moving it. I'm just trying to work out what, like, it's a bit messy, and I appreciate it. I think it would be good to be just sort of in the investments committee and just work it all out, put the hands up and work it through. But I just want to clarify what Paul,
I found I did.
where are you moving?
I
Yeah,
nominated
just trying to work
you.
out, just to tidy up this.
Well, we had
need-
2 resolutions which had Jeremy in both things. So, but I think, I think what we've done now is superseded that because it will be done on Tuesday, and you might find that the names that have been mentioned are all part of that mix.
So Chair, you had a motion on the table when that was raised, I think. So that was finishing that motion.
Okay, we will now move to update on staff delegations manual. Finance and performance. Sorry, page 71.
So
Oh, this is here.
further to decisions that were made about committee composition at the start of triennium, there's been a request for Councillor Evans to join the Management and Performance Committee is for voting member, and this paper comes to you for agreement of that measure.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. There's probably not too much discussion, so I'll put the motion. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Welcome to the full membership of the committee board.
Thank you.
Achievements.
Right, we will now move to 2.4, which is the update to the staff delegations manual. Straightforward.
So this is just to update, every time we update people's titles or appoint new people, we need to update the delegations manual. So this is simply updating those two current titles.
I'll move those two.
Moved by Lyndall, seconded by Phil. Any discussion? I will put the recommendation. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to 10.5, council meeting schedule November 24. Are there any additions to the?
There are a number of changes to be made to the schedule. Basically, it's including the locations of each of the regional catchment liaison committee annual meetings, which you've all received updated appointments through the calendar system, so that they'll be updated in here. In addition, we're adding in the Great South Joint Committee meeting on Thursday, the 14th of November at 9 o'clock for the chairman. And there's a caucus session on Tuesday, the 19th of November at 5 o'clock via Teams. And that's, although councils are meeting on the Wednesday, there's a long-term accommodation meeting on at the same time that you would have had a caucus session, which is why it's been kept to the Tuesday. The regional sector group plenary session is not happening on the 21st of November, and that line needs to be taken out. The changes that I have at this stage. So also to add in the Great South annual meeting, which is on Tuesday, the 12th of November at 10 o'clock.
Anybody that's been to some of those meetings that aren't included on the list that need to be? If not, are there any requests for leave of absence other than what's on the list already?
Yeah, just a change to mine, Jan, sorry, it was my fault because I was confused myself. That's the 13th and 14th of November that I'm unavailable, so I'll miss the workshop in the Regional Services Catchment Liaison Committee chairs and things.
Alice,
Yeah, I'd like to seek leave of absence on the 13th, Wednesday.
13th of November?
November, yes. Grandchildren again.
Thank you, Jen. I think I already had a leave of absence for the period around the catchment meetings. Staff have been extremely good, but I've made changes as well. I won't be here between the 22nd of November and 26th of November. I will catch the Te Anau, Waiau, and one other, so that's good.
So it's the 22nd.
22nd of November to the 26th of November, including. Thank you.
No further bids or alterations? If being none, would somebody like to move?
Yep.
Moved by Lyndall, seconded by Phil, all in favour say aye. I move to 10.6, the common seal. Moved and seconded, all in favour say aye. Right, that will conclude the open part of the meeting today.
Mr. Chairman.
Moved by.
Hear the reason first.
Yeah.
You might decide not to do it when you hear the reason.
The reasons are set out in the agenda. It's for confirmation of public excluded minutes of the 25th of September, the adoption of public excluded committee resolutions from Risk and Assurance Committee the 9th of October and from the Regional Services Committee the 16th of October. To enable a local authority to carry out commercial activities without prejudice or disadvantage, protect information subject to an obligation of confidence that would impact the public interest or prejudice the supply of that same information, to enable to carry out negotiations including commercial and industrial, and to protect information subject to confidence elsewhere, sections 72H, 72C, 72I.
We've heard the reasons. Margaret says move.
I'm happy to second it with that reason.
Been moved and seconded. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Can we confirm we are now offline?
I don't know.
Misplaced enthusiasm, councillor.
Is it
Yeah, that's fine.
You get a sign from it when you're offline.